Check, check. Hey guys, if you're watching this live, we have not officially started yet. We are running into some tech issues that we're trying to resolve before we officially get going, so bear with us just another few minutes.
It's all right. It's running on there. For some reason, it's just really slow at our end over there. I mean, we don't necessarily need that, though.
That was it, because it started, or I should say it stopped being slow once I... Okay, well, so once I... Okay, so I stopped casting it, and now it's acting like it's fine. Can you shut that door for me?
Yeah, yeah.
You know what? Maybe we won't cast it at all. We don't really need to. That works. Good enough. All right, 11:31. Record. Let's get rolling. Well, better late than never. An hour and a half later, we are here. Welcome to the Going Broadway podcast, episode number 2. I am Alex. With me today is Cole. T.O. will be popping out periodically, so we'll see how that goes. Cole, what's happening?
You know, you gotta love it when you hit the PM button on your alarm instead of the AM button. That is beautiful.
We've all done it.
So
We've all done it. Can you hear yourself all right?
I don't hear myself at all.
Really? At all?
I mean, I can hear myself, but not in my headphones.
Uh-oh.
It's awesome.
Hold on a second. Well, just when I thought the tech issues are resolved, I'm going to get our IT guy in here. So those of you watching on the live stream, bear with me just a second. Those of you watching the live stream before we officially got started, you got a sneak peek of sort of what goes on behind the scenes and what can go wrong and a lot of times does go wrong. So we are having an issue with our video stream freezing up, and we had to reset and reset again. So the video works, but now Cole cannot hear himself. So hopefully we'll get our IT guy in here shortly. I just sent him a text message. Maybe I should just yell. He did say, or no, he said scream, didn't he? He said scream if we needed him. But that might not come across very well on the show. So, why don't you maybe try those headphones, see if those are any better, because it could just be a simple headphones thing. Welcome to the wonderful world of live podcasting and audio issues.
Check 1, 2. There we go.
Got it?
Yeah. A lot better.
Sweet. All right. Well, now that we've got that, I'll say under control, maybe not taking care of it completely for the moment, but so this past week, I'll be honest, I didn't watch a whole lot. I watched a little bit last night, very little. I watched a lot of the college football championship game, but let's see. For, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes, we'll just go back to let's go back to Wednesday night Dynamite. Did you catch any of that?
I did, yeah. That was a pretty good show, actually.
So, recap me a little bit, because I watched maybe 10 minutes of it, and the 10 minutes I watched, I don't even remember what I watched. No, I take that back. Was that Omega and Paige against Private Party? Was that one of the matches?
Yeah,
that was part of what I watched. But I guess they're setting up a fatal 4-way match for this upcoming Wednesday, with the winner getting a shot at SCU for the tag titles. So, thoughts on that? Because I can see the logic with, so we're good. The logic behind that. So you've got Young Bucks, you've got Omega and Paige, you've got, who else is in that match? You've got Santana and Ortiz. Who am I leaving out? Who's the fourth team I'm leaving out?
So it's Private Party.
So Private Party is in that.
I'm pretty sure.
Even though they lost to Omega and Paige this past week.
If not them, I didn't really see the poster for it, the announcement for it. But I mean, the big thing in that storyline is that they're more or less teasing the Adam Page breakup from being the Elite more than they are even promoting the tag titles.
Right.
So I feel like that Fatal 4-Way match, you're going to see Adam Page completely turn
heel. Yeah, and they've been teasing that on being the Elite also. So it's Young Bucks, Page and Omega, Santana and Ortiz as best friends.
Best friends, yeah.
So
they won their match, I believe, right? Against the Jurassic Express.
Oh, so that was this past Wednesday.
Yeah, they fought each other this past Wednesday as well.
Gotcha. So I'm just trying to pull up last week's Dynamite because like I said, all I watched was part of the.
You need to go back and watch the end where John Moxley gives his answer to Chris Jericho.
Oh,
Because
okay.
that segment was so awesome because John Moxley sold it as a heel turn. And he goes out there and he's like, you know what? I don't want the car. I don't want any of this stuff. You don't know me at all, Chris Jericho. Like this is exactly like the complete opposite of what I would want. That's why my answer is yes. And he rips his jacket off. He's got an Inner Circle shirt on. They pop a little bit of the bubbly. You know, they're partying. He keeps kind of pandering to the crowd. You know, like.
So they sold it for a good while.
Like 5-10 minutes.
And it didn't seem like the segment went long.
It almost seemed like you thought he was gonna joke the entire time. So like I know typical John Moxley / Dean Ambrose character is to be that kind of jokester or prankster, whatever.
Right.
You know? And so like you got to that point where you thought he was gonna be like, oh, gotcha, Chris. You know, boom, hit the move on him and call it a day, and then like it didn't happen. And so, you know, now we get to this point where they're partying stuff and doing all this stuff, and then John Moxley finally goes, where's the keys to my car?
Okay.
You know, now he's like, hey, where's my car? So now he's got the keys to the car. They re-celebrate again. And Chris Jericho's on the mic, you know, you guys hate this. I know you hate this, but this is our moment. Inner Circle, you know, just going off. And then finally, like 10 minutes into this segment, you got
10 minutes.
It seemed like forever, man.
But it didn't seem like it was dragging.
I felt like it's exactly what needed to happen. So it wasn't a typical, okay, here's someone who's obviously not going to join the Inner Circle, playing like he's joining the Inner Circle. So you almost needed it to feel like it was dragging just a little. And
gotcha.
Finally, he goes, "Hey, Chris, I was just playing," and he got Hager and Sammy Guevara outside of the ring to where they couldn't do anything about it. And he goes, "Hey, Chris, I was just playing. I'm not joining the Inner Circle. Inner Circle sucks."
Oh, okay. I saw that. I saw a clip on that, I think, through Facebook or Instagram saying, like, it's a stupid group or something like that. I mean, it was like a 10-second clip. But
and then he takes the little bit of the bubbly and he smacks it over Chris's head. And I think he hit him with something. And then he runs out of the ring because Hager and all that stuff.
So basically now they're off to the races, setting up the match for Revolution at the end of February. And
yeah.
Okay.
That was the highlight. I mean, that was... Everything else kind of seemed almost like build-up matches to something else. But that to me was kind of...
So it's a normal show. Like, nothing fantastic, but it wasn't bad.
They had the Riho versus Chris Statlander?
Statlander, yeah.
Statlander. They had that match, and that just got pretty much interrupted by the Nightmare Experience or whatever with Brandy Rhodes and...
I don't see the point in that group at all. It just...
Apparently, it's going to have a very, very big effect eventually. Like, they finally introduced who that bald dude in all those promos was. And, they kind of set up a tag match with Riho and Chris Statlander versus the Nightmare.
Yeah, I saw that, like you said, a lot of what they did this past week set up the show for this upcoming Wednesday. It was kind of like their Bash at the Beach show, which is a playoff old school WCW for those old school wrestling fans out there. They had a pay-per-view called Bash at the Beach, and they're just kind of playing off that. So this upcoming Wednesday is... I'm going to pull this up again. I had it pulled up, and then I exited out of it, but... I remember that there were a lot of tag matches that were set up, whether it's standard tag or I think you've got that.
Isn't there a 6-man tag?
The 6-man tag. So let's look. That's not the right website. Come on. Technology is great when it works. but when it doesn't, there it goes. Okay, so you've got Sheeta and Statlander against the Nightmare Collective. So that's that Mel chick and Awesome Kong.
Wow.
So you've got another tag match, the 4-way tag match I mentioned earlier. You've got the 6-man tag match with MJF, Butcher, and Blade against DDP, Dustin, and QT Marshall. So far, the only... I guess, okay, there's two. There's two singles matches. You've got Pac and Darby Allin, and you've got Moxley and Guevara. And then it looks like they've... Oh, okay, I'm looking at something else. They've got a 6-man tag match, but that's set up for the following Wednesday, which is Jericho's Rockin' Wrestling Rager, I'm sorry.
They're going to be on the cruise.
Uh-huh. I'm kind of interested to watch how that comes off live, especially since they've been having audio issues. I mean, pretty much since they started. The Dynamite that we went to in Champaign, I was talking with T.O. through texting while we were there, and he said the audio issues how it came across on TV was awful, which sucks because I thought the crowd there was good. I thought it was really good.
Now, do you think that's TNT or do you think that's AEW?
So, on one of the episodes of Being the Elite, Matt Jackson, I think it was Nick that said this. He mentioned that they were having audio issues, at least for a particular episode, or for that particular episode, the one we were at, because the satellites in Atlanta, where I guess they were operating out of, or something, however it was worded, went out during the show. Now, I guess that would explain that particular episode, but then what's the reason for the audio issues for all the other shows?
Right.
But I don't know if that's just a cop-out, if it's a legit excuse, but whatever. So that was AEW. So fast forward to SmackDown Friday. I watched zero SmackDown.
We're just going to skip NXT like that, huh?
Well, I'm saving the best for last.
Okay.
I'm trying to start off decent, put the not so great stuff in the middle, and then circle back to NXT. So
SmackDown was all right, but I kind of feel like that's where SmackDown's at right now. Is like I kind of feel like we're back to where SmackDown's the B show again, and I don't know why. Like, they signed the deal with Fox, they bring Roman Reigns over.
Well, when you say the B show, are you including NXT as the A show?
I would say NXT is the A show, but I feel like WWE treats it still like it's its lesser product.
Yeah, which
sucks, but like we all know the truth. But I'm saying, like, with how storylines and how things get treated, I still kind of feel like we're at this moment where like SmackDown gets these like average, almost below average storylines. You know, like the whole, Bobby Roode came back on SmackDown and interrupts that Usos match.
Mm-hmm.
I love that the Usos are back finally. I think that was a missing element for SmackDown.
I'm kind of indifferent on the Usos, but that's a discussion for another day.
I think that they needed somebody to get the crowd going, and so I'm glad they're there, and it kind of makes the Roman Reigns storyline make sense now, because now there's at least a group versus a group.
Right.
So Bobby Roode came back, which is cool.
I wish they would push him more. I've always liked Bobby Roode. They just throw him in such goofy.
So he comes in and gets the United States title, right? So like first out the gate from NXT, he's NXT champion, comes in, becomes the United States champion, then has a tag run, has a pretty good tag run with Chad Gable.
Right.
Thought that was good, and then it's like he fell off the map. And then they try to like kind of rebrand him and recast him and in a different way. I like him and Ziggler together. But I feel like Ziggler is like the curse of the castaways. Like, Dolph Ziggler should have been pushed a long, long time ago, and still kind of gets these crappy, terrible storylines.
Yeah.
But SmackDown was all right. I couldn't even really tell you like a storyline that was just like, that was just wow,
The thing I wanted to mention is, so John Morrison officially came back Um, I'll say he was on camera the week before, but they actually brought him in ring, did a segment with Miz, and then that set up something with New Day. But that's all I remember.
So I mean, they're obviously teasing the John Morrison Miz tag up again, which wouldn't be bad for the tag team division that has some actual names that can help get the belt over, especially from a heel status. Like, name one good heel group on SmackDown other than the Revival.
I don't know. I think I'm probably in the minority on this, but the segments I've caught, most of them just been random clips through YouTube or whatever. But Nakamura and Sami Zayn they crack me up because I know they're supposed to be a heel group, but it's like a purposely, or maybe not purposely, I should say, but I don't know. They're just fun to watch on TV.
Oh, most definitely. And you almost could say Cesaro with either Sammy or Shinsuke could win the belts, but you got to have Shinsuke drop the Intercontinental for that to happen.
Yeah, I'm kind of intrigued to see how they treat Nakamura.
With Strowman?
Well, yes, but kind of piggybacking off that, how they treat him just going forward as far as their roster goes, because now that I think he's re-signed.
Yeah, I don't have a confirmation on that. I was looking at it last night, and I felt like it looked wrong because I'm still showing that his contract is up. And there's no...
like coming up soon, you mean?
Like his contract's up here in 2020, and there's no, did he sign? Because all these other ones I saw, they all said, okay, they signed multi-year deals in 2019.
Right.
Or they signed up and they have WWE took out an option, or, like right now Revivals is coming up, and but Dash Wilder has 10 extra weeks due to injury.
Right.
So, yeah, I would be interested to see what they do with Shinsuke if they haven't got him to sign yet.
So that'll be something we talk about later in the show, is whose careers might benefit or be hindered by if they went to a different wrestling company. I'm sure Shinsuke is one name we'll mention. The Revival we'll mention.
Oh, yeah.
So let's... I was going to fast forward to Raw, but I'd be kind of remiss if we didn't talk about, even though I watch zero of their product and have watched zero of their product for years, Impact had their pay-per-view on Sunday, and
you saw the big match, right?
I saw what happened, but I didn't watch it live. They crowned the first ever woman, I should say, the first ever woman to win a main title, like a main championship that was not designated as a women's title. Like, it's the men's championship. So this is kind of a twofold topic. I won't spend a whole lot of time on it, but before the show went on, or maybe it was the day before, there were these accusations that came out that she made racist comments to, I don't even remember her name, but Tessa Blanchard posted on Twitter something along the lines of, hey, let's, us girls need to be nice to each other. Or I don't even remember how it was worded, but basically there was backlash from other women's wrestlers that came out and said, well, this is also coming from somebody that made racist comments in years past. It came out that WWE didn't actually offer her a contract, allegedly because of attitude issues. And then the accusations were enough to so much that an indie company that had her booked actually pulled her off the card. So that led me to believe, well, maybe Impact won't have her win the belt. Turns out that they did.
Over Sami Callihan, who is just completely over there. All right, like let's not take anything away from her, but they put her over somebody who is literally, like, to me, the face of Impact right now.
And see, I wouldn't know. Like, I know the name Sami Callihan, but I don't know to the degree how popular he is. If he's somebody that
It's hard to follow Impact because they're not on anything. They're not on any streaming service that's easily accessible.
So do they have a TV deal right now with anybody?
I
Are they?
believe they do. Because I actually got to catch some of their reruns when I was in Ohio. I was staying at a hotel and it was on a local channel that was broadcasting their reruns of a month ago's shows. And so I think they have a TV deal. I actually stay in touch with them over their top 5 moments on YouTube.
Okay.
And I'm able to at least stay up to date with some because RVD's there, Brian Cage was there, and we don't really know where we don't know where he's at right now. I like Tessa Blanchard, and they have some other names too, but that's how I kind of keep up with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, this storyline's literally just a remake of Becky Lynch. All right, like the difference is Becky Lynch didn't go win a predominantly man's title,
Right.
but they set her up to be the face of the company in WWE.
Which worked for a while, but then...
I mean, just like any name, it's going to die off eventually.
Yeah.
It's going to grow sour. And you got to find ways to recreate them and keep their streak hot, in a sense. And I think in WWE, Becky Lynch lost that because there's not many people to put her up against. I mean, the way she got hot was going up against Ronda Rousey and Charlotte Flair. And once those two big names drop, I mean, who else do you put her against? And so they're trying to build those same storylines with people who aren't necessarily there. Tessa Blanchard, there's no one really like that in Impact that you can put her up female-wise that's like, oh, here's another name that gets her, on a streak.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Impact was like, okay, we saw that work. Let's see what we can do. And, they put her in the storyline. They had her beat Brian Cage to even get the title opportunity, which I just thought was insane. But then they have her actually go over on Sami Callihan, which congrats to her. It's a awesome feat and awesome thing for her career, especially when you go against those accusations and those things. Like that's a big help.
Yeah, I guess my opinion on her having the belt, I'm just indifferent on it. But if you're gonna have a woman win the primary title, then just get rid of your women's title and be done with it.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, their women's one might be vacant right now.
I thought Valkyrie is the one that had it.
I'm not sure on that. Like I never see her have it when she comes out to the ring. You would think that she would, and you would have thought that Valkyrie was a big enough name to kind of at least play a good women's match off of. But
yeah. Everett says, talk closer to your mic.
Check. I'm right on top of it.
Yeah. By the way, for those of you listening, Everett's our IT guy. He's the one that does all the grunt work behind the scenes and helped get us going this morning even with all the tech issues. So, E, thanks for literally bending over backwards to get all this stuff going for us. We appreciate it. All right, so let's get to the meat and bones of this conversation. NXT from this past Wednesday. I'll just kind of give you the floor because I didn't watch a whole lot of it, but I heard like it is every week.
It's exciting. So the highlight of the show for me obviously was the number one contenders match. We got Keith Lee now going up for the North America Championship. Which is exciting for me because I'm a huge Keith Lee fan. So I'm excited to see what he does against Roderick Strong. It would be nice to kind of see Undisputed Era kind of lose a belt or kind of create a little bit of diversity in NXT now. So that was a great match. If you didn't watch that match, that Fatal 4-Way with Cameron Grimes, Keith Lee, Dijakovic, and Damian Priest, it was a great match. So that was the highlight. The other highlight for me is the Rhea Ripley storyline, actually, or if you want to call her Rhea. Her being the champion, she was the perfect person to dethrone Shayna Baszler. I love that storyline. And now you got all these people who are wanting to fight her. Tony Storm came out, and Tony Storm now is like, hey, I've beaten you twice for the NXT UK belt.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna beat you now for this one. And then you got Bianca Belair who comes out. You got Io Shirai who comes out. You got Candice LeRae who comes out. You got what's her name, Kaylee Ray from NXT UK. And they all start coming out. You got this the 6 woman tag match that happens, and Bianca Belair and Io, and they kind of start feuding with each other, and so that whole thing, that match is exciting just because NXT probably has one of the most diverse women's divisions that's out there. They have a lot of talent on their roster and not many places to put them.
They have a diverse roster
in general.
period. I mean,
but like specifically, I feel like compared to every other women's division that you look at, even within WWE, every other show, no one has the women's division that NXT has. And so it's exciting to see them get so many names into a match and so many names thrown into the hat even of who's going to fight for this title.
I would agree. Now, kind of piggybacking off what you said, there have been couple things that have come out about Io Shirai and why am I brain lapsing on her name? She's with Asuka right now.
Oh, Kairi Sane.
Kairi Sane. So Stardom, which is now owned by New Japan, or at least the same company that owns New Japan now owns Stardom. They're wanting to bring Io Shirai back with Kairi Sane. And kind of a side story from that is the fact that Io Shirai is allegedly unhappy with her spot on NXT, or just her spot in general not coming up to the quote unquote main roster, however you want to put it. Do you think they would ever make the jump?
Not there. And I mean, I have them on my list to talk about. My thing is that I think Io might be just a little jealous. When she came into NXT, Kairi was already built.
Right.
They took 2 or 3 years to really get Kairi Sane built because she's not the average build of a women's wrestler in WWE right now. She's a lot smaller, a lot more agile, high flying. Kind of thing, which there's just not a lot of that in the women's division there. So I felt like they really built Io up, and then, or not Io, I'm sorry, my apologies, Kairi. They really built Kairi up. They got her to where she was main roster ready, and Io came in at the very back end of that. And they had these dope storylines going on with her and Kairi, and it kind of looked like they were teasing that tag team in NXT and all that stuff. And then out of nowhere, they call Kairi up, and it kind of leaves Io in the wind. There's really nowhere to put her. So then they try to make this new friendship out of nowhere with her and Candice LeRae, and then tease a storyline where there's a breakup. I think they were going to do that with Kairi before the call-up. I think there was a big breakup getting ready to happen between her and Io, and that kind of fell through, so they went with Candice, and they've kind of teased her. They had her lose to Shayna, and I think that's really what might have set Io off is, I should have been able to be put over on Shayna. And so now I feel like that might be where her discord is, if that's even true. A lot of these rumors like to come out to keep us on our toes. So it could just be storyline that she's unhappy. We've heard for years that Dolph Ziggler's unhappy and all these people are unhappy, and then they show back up in WWE, 4 months later. You know what I mean? So
and depending on the talent, depending on who it is, it could be a storyline. It could just be that yes, they're unhappy until they get more money.
Right.
I think that was probably the case, at least with Ziggler. Not to get off on a tangent, but I legit think he was unhappy because they would act like they're going to push him to the moon and then just drop it. I mean, I probably can't count on one hand how many times that's happened, but I'm pretty sure that what it came down to was money, and they just said, okay, well,
then he does the comedy on the side. He's got other endeavors.
Yeah, and they give him freedom to do whatever he wants as far as that goes.
He has a pretty lax schedule now to just get paid a ton to really not be the focus.
Yeah. Um. All right. Well, am I leaving anything out from this past week? I know there's so much, like we talked about last week. There's so much wrestling content out there now that we didn't even talk about Ring of Honor. We didn't talk about anything NWA. That's one thing I wanted to mention is I noticed that it seems like that Ring of Honor is partnering with NWA, and they're also partnering with New Japan. So Ring of Honor and NWA have had this thing with. So getting ahead of myself a little bit, Marty Scurll, who was, he's been buddies with the Young Bucks and Cody and Kenny Omega.
Half of AEW.
Essentially, it was expected that he once his contract came up that he was just on a pay per appearance with Ring of Honor, and eventually he was going to sign with AEW, and then he about a month or so ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, showed up on NWA with Nick Aldis, did a little schmoz with him. I wouldn't even call it a schmoz, but and so you thought, oh, okay, well maybe he's kind of just testing the waters, but he's still going to wind up in AEW. Well, this past week he not only re-signed with Ring of Honor, but is allegedly the head booker,
lead booker,
and so now that he's back with Ring of Honor, Nick Aldis showed up on a Ring of Honor show this past weekend and actually cost them the 6-man belts, I believe.
Yeah.
So they've got that kind of.
Well, Nick Aldis actually interrupted and attacked Flip Gordon.
Right. Flip Gordon was replacing PCO on there.
Yeah.
In that match. And then it was announced, I think just yesterday, that Jay White, who's with New Japan Pro Wrestling, is going to be on a Ring of Honor show in February, I believe. And so I just want to bring that up. I think that's kind of interesting that, there's a partnership there, and I don't know if it's in spite of the reports that are coming out that New Japan and AEW might be doing something. They are, they aren't. Just a lot to be determined, I guess.
You also got to look at their contracts. So I was noticing this last night. A lot of them have like freedom to go book when they sign these contracts with these lower level or lower tier organizations. I noticed a lot of the ROH guys actually that are top guys, they actually have the freedom to go and wrestle here and wrestle there. I mean, even Moxley, you look at John Moxley, he's holding belts in New Japan.
Right. And that's a good point. And that's something
that's because the contract that he initially signed when he went independent was, hey, I'm gonna go around for a little bit. I think eventually he dedicates himself to AEW when that storyline and that kind of run with New Japan is over with. But for the most part, a lot of these guys, if you go look at their contract, it says, hey, they're a freelancer.
Mm-hmm.
They can go and do this, and this, but this is where you're going to see them the most.
Yeah, and that might have been a turnoff to Marty Scurll and signing with AEW. I don't know.
Well, I think AEW is trying to get to a place where they're not doing that.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, they probably just brought Moxley on because, like, okay,
he's a name.
He's a name. Well, he was the first big name that didn't start with them right off the bat. He wasn't at the presser that they had in.
Yeah, but they knew then. They knew then that he was coming.
Well, I read somewhere that they didn't know for sure that he was in until maybe a week before. Was it Double or Nothing?
Oh yeah. But again, the talks were there.
Yeah. The talks were there. It's just one of those things that it makes you wonder if they gave him the contract that he did because, okay, we got to get this guy in here to help build our brand. Just give him what he wants in his contract. If he wants to go to New Japan, if he wants to go, whoever will have him, let's just do it. But now I tend to agree with you over the fact that I think they are wanting more exclusive contracts. So, for example, MJF just finished with Major League Wrestling, and he was kind of their big name for a while. Like you mentioned, I mean, besides Moxley and Jericho, there's nobody else from AEW that's wrestling anywhere else that I can think off the top of my head.
Not like exclusively, no. I mean, I think some of their lower level guys probably are guys that you don't even really see on TV.
Jimmy Havoc, I think, is still doing some shows here and there, but I think these guys...
Joey Janela, actually, I'm pretty sure is still doing a few of those lower level things as well. And a lot of them are probably saying, hey, I can sign now, I can show up on AEW, and when this contract I sign is over with, I'll be done.
Right.
You know, and they're just honoring their commitments at that point. I mean, AEW's got to look at it like how WWE does, though. WWE will sign a John Cena and a Brock Lesnar and a CM Punk, and they're okay with signing guys saying, hey, as long as you're making me money when you're here, I don't care what you do over there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's got to be the right guy, and I think they looked at that with John Moxley and were like, you know what? He's the right guy to do that kind of contract with.
Yeah. Now, and we'll get off this topic shortly because we've actually spent a lot longer on this than I thought we would, but hey, that's fine. So Moxley's going to be going for the AEW title at Revolution at the end of February. That's a given. Do you think that they would put the belt on him if he still has the IWGP US belt by then?
So I think I think he's gonna drop that New Japan belt.
So
sooner than later.
So I know that New Japan has. I mean, they don't have a whole lot of what I would call house shows because all of their shows, to some degree, are fairly well promoted. They've got cameras there. You know, they've got their New Japan Pro Wrestling World app or subscription service, whatever you want to call it. So a lot of their events are not as large scale as, say, you know, a Wrestle Kingdom or whatever,
right.
But you know, they're still, I guess, our equivalent of the term that we still use, pay-per-views, of sort of. I say that not knowing, you know, what events they have between now and, you know, a month and a half from now is Revolution. So I tend to think that if they're going to put the belt on Moxley, that they're going to say, okay, no more New Japan stuff. You need to drop the IWGP US belt. If not, you know, we're just going to keep it on Jericho. I think if he still has the IWGP United States title by Revolution, I would be very surprised if he wins the belt from Jericho.
Agreed. And the reason why is that AEW doesn't want a Brock Lesnar champion. They don't want a guy who's got a commitment over here who can't make this week's taping. I mean, if you noticed, even though Jericho has those kind of deals around where he can go other places, he's there at AEW every week.
He's there every week.
Every week because he's the face. I mean, we can act like being the elite is the guys, but they were smart. They made Jericho the face of their company. They give him a microphone. They let him just get extremely over. I mean, he's the only heel in AEW who can be a heel and still get the crowd to cheer for him.
Well, and the thing is, too, I think that a lot of people think in the back of their minds, okay, whoever's the champion has to wrestle every week. No, he doesn't have to wrestle every week. He doesn't even have to wrestle outside of the main pay-per-views. He just needs to be on TV every week if he's going to be champion. Like, if you're the champion, you are the de facto face of the company. You need to at least be on TV every week. I 100% agree with that statement. Now, this goes back to what I mentioned. I don't know what New Japan's schedule looks like throughout the week. I think Japan is like, 15 hours ahead of us or something like that.
125%.
But it makes you wonder if, let's say he had both belts, if, could he make it work? I don't know.
AEW is risking a lot on him, though, because New Japan, they don't just put on a match. They put on the match. Every match you watch in New Japan, they're out to make it the match of the night. And you put the reins on John Moxley to be the guy for AEW, and then he goes and gets hurt in New Japan. You're risking your whole belt on him.
Yeah, it is a big risk. I'm kind of surprised they had Jericho wrestle with, as AEW champion, just because, like you said, in any match, that's the risk. Like, you could get injured, and that's, that goes back to why a lot of wrestling companies want those exclusive contracts, because it's like, if we're paying you, we don't want you to get hurt, while you're competing for another organization. So just a lot of interesting storylines going on across the board. And we'll kind of touch base more on that as we go through our main topic. Even though we're 40 minutes into the show, we haven't even touched our main topic, but totally not a big deal. So just real quick before we get there, do have to do a quick plug on our podcast as well as our app.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
So you can check out the Going Broadway podcast with new shows every week on Apple Podcasts and Google Play, as well as a number of other platforms where you can access your podcasting. For those of you that are watching us live right now, each of our shows are archived, and you can go back and watch any of them on Facebook or via our YouTube channel as well. You can check out goingbroadwaypodcast.com/YouTube and give us a like, give us a subscribe on our channel. All of our shows will be uploaded at the conclusion of the broadcast. Please also download our free app. It's called Yo Radio. It can be downloaded through the App Store or via Google Play. Yo Radio is the most advanced user-driven streaming radio service on the market. Everything you would expect and more from the most full-featured platforms ever developed. Listen to an endless genre of music, podcasts, including our show via the Lineup channel, sports, news, and more 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And also, it is 100% free all day, every day. Again, that's Yo Radio, available via the App Store, Google Play, or by visiting yoradio.com. All right. So whenever Cole got here this morning, he says he stayed up late last night compiling a list of wrestlers we could talk about who, either whose contracts are coming up, they're already up, or couldn't really get a good read on if they're up or coming up soon, but possibly might be considering a jump or teasing a jump or whatever. So let's get right to it. So let's just go down your list and see who we got.
First and foremost, I wanted to kind of just talk about some of the ones that are either rumored or we kind of see a hint. First and foremost, we got Brian Cage, and we keep hearing the rumor that he may have sort of kind of signed with AEW. I think that's a perfect signing for him. I'm hoping that that's true. We were even talking to a buddy of ours who were kind of nervous if he signed, would they let him have a storyline and a match right now in AEW, because a lot of the bigger guys in AEW right now aren't getting matches. You got Luchasaurus, and that's about it. There's not like Jake Hager hasn't really fought yet, and I kind of explained that I'm pretty sure he has an MMA fight that's still on the books and he's got obligations, but Wardlow hasn't fought yet. You see a lot of, even the Dark Order. He hasn't really fought a whole lot of matches yet. So the big man isn't really a utilized thing in AEW right now.
Mm-hmm.
But Brian Cage is a different animal. The dude can high fly. He spent a lot of time in Lucha Underground, Impact, ROH. I think he's versatile enough to get over in AEW and be a front runner actually for them. What do you think?
The thing with Brian Cage is that this goes back to the fact that I don't watch Impact that much, and so I'll be honest, I've probably maybe watched 3-4 minutes total ever of any kind of Brian Cage match, highlights, whatever. Now, what I have seen is, it looks like he can work in the ring. It's just, unfortunately, it's just my lack of, seeing any of his stuff. So I would take your opinion, anyone's opinion that's watched a lot of his matches that say he would be good. I would just go with your opinion and say, okay, if he's good, then, someone will sign him, whether that's AEW, if Impact re-signs him. I don't know that he would go to WWE.
I don't think he would work in WWE. He could go to NXT just like 90% of free agents out there and probably get over or have good matches, because there's good matches. There's a lot of good opponents there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for him, he needs to go where wrestling's the focus, and I think that's AEW.
Well, if he went to NXT/WWE, I think he would just get the EC3 treatment. Like he would get a semi push, and then it would just.
So to me, EC3 is more of a mic guy. EC3 is really good on the mic, and he's a average, good wrestler.
I'd say average at best, but
right. Where I think Brian Cage is probably an above average wrestler in my opinion, and maybe not be the most mic savvy person.
Yeah.
Which is why AEW is perfect for him, because you don't have to cut a ton of promos. It's all about what can you do in the ring and what kind of 5-star match can you put on for this company.
So, final verdict on Brian Cage, in your opinion. Does he benefit from staying with Impact? Does he benefit from going to AEW? Would he be hindered by making a move elsewhere?
I think the home for him is AEW. I think Impact doesn't have enough for him to grow. I think he's actually outgrown Impact already. So I would definitely say AEW is a good place for him, depending on where AEW uses him. AEW doesn't have a mid-card belt right now. So.
Right. So from my perspective, again, not seeing much of his work, much of his matches, it does seem like, from what you're telling me, he's ready for a bigger stage. I just don't know if that bigger stage is... I would say it's not WWE or even NXT. I think he would just get lost in the mix, lost in the shuffle. He'd be there for a year or two, however long the contract would be. If it's longer than that, he'd ask for his release, and then whether or not they'd release him,
right.
I don't know. AEW, I could see him thriving. I could see him getting lost in the mix there as well. Case in point, while he's more of a personality, I feel like Shawn Spears is very, 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 I'll just say, I'm trying to think of the right word. It's surprisingly disappointing at how they're using him.
Most definitely.
Especially with putting Tully Blanchard with him as his manager, as his mouthpiece. You would think that, okay, if this guy is good enough to have Tully Blanchard put with him, that, we're at least going to use him more than just on AEW Dark every couple weeks. Like, I don't even remember the last time he was on a Dynamite episode.
I mean, so what would help AEW is getting a mid-card belt. Because
Agreed.
It would allow guys like Darby Allin and Shawn Spears and some of those guys to get more exposure and to grow. I think Brian Cage is a lot better of a wrestler than Shawn Spears even.
Oh, yeah. I mean, from what you're telling me, it sounds like it.
He's more athletic. Shawn Spears is kind of more of an old school type of wrestler, compared to what's out there right now. So we'll see where he's at. But I think AEW is a good home for him.
Okay. Who's next?
I want to get your thoughts on John Morrison coming back to WWE.
I would have initially said WWE just because, I mean, he's somebody I have watched over the years in terms of, well, not over the years, because I just recently started watching it again probably a year or two ago-ish. But I've gone back and seen a lot of his matches from, mid-2000s or, yeah, sounds about right, mid-late 2000s. So I know he can work in the ring. He can talk on the mic.
Shaman of sex.
I just don't think they're using him right now. Case in point, they should have saved him until the Rumble. They should have saved him to the Royal Rumble, have him be, if WWE is set on having 9 guys or a certain amount of guys from Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, like if they want the same amount of guys from each program or each show, instead of doing 10, 10, and 10, do 9, 9, and 9, and still have 3 surprise entrants. They should have saved John Morrison as a surprise entrant. I wouldn't have even announced him when they signed him to start with. I would not have had him come on that backstage show. I just would have signed him, kept it quiet, kept it under wraps, and then as soon as his music hit that
right.
whatever his intro is, people would have recognized it. It would have gotten a huge reaction, and then off you go.
Right.
Um,
They did say that in his promo this past week, that he's made the statement saying, I was supposed to get, new music, kind of a new thing at Royal Rumble. That was supposed to be my thing, but I just saw my buddy Miz going through this. So they kind of teased the idea that a lot of us probably feel the same way, that he should have been a surprise entrance in Royal Rumble.
Yeah, and that just goes back to, that's another one of those topics. Like, is that a true statement? Or if they're just like, in wrestling terms, is that just kayfabe? Or if it's
acknowledging the fact that they should have done this, or that they know their fans are going to want this, knowing that they had a different storyline in mind. I'm glad he's home. I feel like he tried to run from WWE, because he left WWE, went to Lucha Underground, went to ROH, went to Impact.
So was he with Ring of Honor?
I'm pretty sure he had at least some matches while he was with Impact, because Impact was kind of allowing their guys to freelance some too.
He's a guy I would have been interested to watch in New Japan, like have matches with guys like Kota Ibushi.
Right.
But ultimately, I think my final call is, I think he's good with WWE. His career is probably, he's been around for a while. He's probably wrapping up his career within the next, I'd say, 5 years.
Yeah.
So if he stays with WWE, I'm assuming, most of WWE's new contracts are for 5 years from what I'm seeing. If he wraps up his career there, good for him. I just hope they use him right.
Right. I see Intercontinental and United States and tag title runs for him. I don't know if I see him as a main card, depending on what show he's on. SmackDown doesn't have a lot of main card talent.
Yeah.
So that could be in his favor.
It'd be interesting if they pulled like a Finn Balor with him and moved him to NXT, like once he's, been around for a few months or a year or whatever. I'm not saying I would agree or disagree with that. I guess I just wouldn't be surprised if they do that. But ultimately, John Morrison, WWE, I think that's probably a good call for him.
So you already know I'm going to ask about this guy, because I messaged you in our chat about this. What's your thoughts on Alex Shelley joining? We don't really know if he's signed to NXT, because when you do these Dusty Road Classics and Mae Young Classics, they like to bring in talented names, and they're like one-off runs. They might just be testing the waters. I told you that him and Kushida tagging, that's a familiar indie tag team.
Time splitters.
That could be a potential heel turn for Alex Shelley that joins NXT and all that stuff. So, what's your thoughts? Do you think he's coming NXT? Do you think this is a one-off run? Good move for him, bad move for him at this time in his career?
I would say, he's another guy that's been around for a while, which, you wouldn't know it because, if you see a picture of him or if you even watch him wrestle, you'd think, well, this is a fairly young guy. But I bet if you look up his age, I bet he's in his 30s.
Oh, most definitely.
Mid-30s probably. But, he's probably been around since his late teens.
Yeah.
Like, he probably started 18, 19, whatever. If he's coming in to, if he's wanting to wrap up his wrestling career and be done with in-ring stuff and then move on to maybe like a producer type back behind the scenes backstage guy, I think it's the right move. I think it depends on what his intentions are past this Dusty Rhodes Classic tournament. If he's wanting to wrestle for, a number of more years. If he's wanting to do another 10 years, I just don't know. I don't know his age. I don't know what kind of condition his body's in. I know he's had injuries, but so have most pro wrestlers. But
right.
I would say if he's looking to, like I said, wrap up his wrestling career within a couple years, then move to a backstage role, I think that's a perfect move for him. If he's wanting to still wrestle long term, I think it's a bad move. If he's wanting to wrestle long term, I think he should have gone to I don't know. I hesitate to say AEW. I would say if he's wanting to wrestle for a number of more years, do the New Japan Ring of Honor thing. I would probably stay away from Impact Wrestling. If I were him, just do. I would say minus the head booker stuff. Try to do whatever Marty Scurll did. Get whatever deal he did, probably for less money. but just have the freedom to be able to go wherever you want to go because he's a name that people recognize.
Right.
So I would just, it depends on what he's looking for.
My side note on that is my hope is that if he's going NXT and that's where he's going to be, I just hope and pray that Chris Sabin is right there behind him. I'm a Motor City Machine Gun fan. Like I think that tag team is an underrated tag team that we could see some great matches, especially in NXT where that tag division is kind of lacking right now. So I hope that if he is there, that Chris Sabin is right behind him to create that tag team there in NXT. So I'm going to ask you the big name now. What's your thoughts on CM Punk? Is he coming back for WrestleMania? Is he coming back to wrestle? Is this all just a tease to play over the fact that Fox hired a guy that Vince doesn't want and they just got to keep teasing it to make the awkwardness go away?
I think at this point, WWE almost to some degree, the key word there is to some degree, but to some degree doesn't care, for lack of a better way of putting it, who they hire. Case in point. So, and I'll get back to CM Punk in a second. So with Corey Graves doing his After the Bell podcast, he has openly trashed a lot of WWE storylines right now. And even go as far as to saying, and this is a quote from Ric Flair from back in WCW days, whenever he had a promo with Bischoff, he said, "Fire me, I'm already fired." But he goes on, he says what he wants, and I think that he has the freedom to do or say whatever he wants, because otherwise I think he would be fired at this point. Now, coming back to CM Punk, I wouldn't be surprised if they brought him in. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't. I think ultimately what it comes down to is WWE is open to bringing him in. I think it's a matter of whether CM Punk, what he's looking for, what he wants, how much money is involved. Is it if it's for a WrestleMania match, if it's a surprise Rumble appearance, if it's both. I'm not even sure if he cares if he gets pushed not at this point. As far as his career goes, that's a hard one to answer because CM Punk has a personality that is not like anybody else.
Right.
It's, if you go back and watch, so they did a documentary on him back in late 2000s, I think. I'm trying to think. I think it was late 2000s, but I don't even know what word to put with it, but they kind of went behind the scenes a little bit in terms of just, Phil Brooks, the person, and he's just a weird, not weird, but it's just an unusual personality. That's just the best way I can put it. And so because he has such an unusual personality, there's that, where's the fine line between what does Phil Brooks want, what does CM Punk want, and like which side of the, and I hope I'm making as much sense as possible for everyone that's listening. It's like, what side of the pendulum is he going to swing more towards? Because I can see him being like, okay, well, Phil Brooks is me. Like that's, what do I want as Phil Brooks? But then at the same time, it's like, then there's CM Punk, the character, and that is, and this goes with any pro wrestler, like CM Punk, that's who he is as far as his character. That's who he is. That's his brand. Like that's who he is marketed as. And that far surpasses Phil Brooks, the person, but he puts so much emphasis in his life as Phil Brooks, the person, which is understandable. I get it. But he also realizes the fact that CM Punk is him as far as his brand goes. Like that's how he makes a living.
Right.
So I could see it I can see it swinging in either direction, but I think it all depends on him. I think WWE is willing to hire him. I think any wrestling company is willing to hire him. It's just, where is the line of, again, how much money is involved? If he's more interested in making CM Punk happy, or if he's more interested in making Phil Brooks happy.
Most definitely.
What do you think?
My thoughts are more kind of where you're at. Like, it all comes down to brand loyalty. Are you committed to making the product good, or are you committed to making sure that you're happy? I think he's showing a lot of signs that he doesn't care whether or not WWE succeeds or AEW, whoever it is. I don't think he really cares if the product succeeds, and I think that's why so many people are leery on giving him so much leeway or so much room to be the guy. Because we've noticed that when that happens, he doesn't get his way or he doesn't like the direction. He's the first one to go on Twitter and post, I hate this.
Right. How many more you got on your list? I'm just curious because we got about 12-ish minutes before we got to wrap it up.
I'm going to go down some of these contracts now, and we'll just kind of give a quick idea of who's there. So we got the Hardy Bros up in March.
Well, hold on a second. So Matt's is allegedly coming up like this month or early next month. And
the rumor is they're going to move him to SmackDown, but I haven't.
So Jeff's side of it, his contract is delayed because of the injuries, or I think it's injuries, but he just happened to get into more legal trouble while he was injured. So I guess that has little to do with it. But Matt, on the other hand, I could see him, and I will selfishly say I would like for him to go to AEW just because of how they have really dropped the ball on him. I mean, they could have pushed this broken gimmick to the moon. They acted like they were going to, and they just Matt Hardy didn't drop the ball. WWE did.
Yeah,
like, I mean,
100%.
They could have pushed it to the moon, and they didn't. They kind of put him with Bray Wyatt for a little bit. They did a tag run, but they didn't push it enough, and that's what fans wanted. If you go back to on YouTube, if you pull up the video where he first did, so before he and Bray Wyatt tagged, they had a feud.
Yeah,
excuse me, and if you go to that promo where they kind of went back and forth. If you go and read the comments, like, people loved it. I mean, there's still people going back today and watching it and commenting and say,
where's this at?
You guys being WWE, you guys dropped the ball on this. Like, you should have. I'm not necessarily saying put the belt on Hardy, but I don't know. Maybe you do. I mean, they put the belt on the Fiend, aka Bray Wyatt. So it's like, I don't know.
It's probably more has to do where he's at in his age and his health and things of that nature. But I still don't think you killed the gimmick. I don't think it was something that you had to kill off.
100% agree. It's just funny because if you also go back and watch the video on YouTube, I think it's actually on WWE's channel, where they came back and made their surprise return at WrestleMania. They did this whole thing about how, good to be home, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, I remember watching it the first time, maybe, I don't know, what was that? WrestleMania 33, maybe?
Somewhere in there, yeah.
I remember going, and this is around the time I started kind of watching and following it again. I remember going back and watching that video, maybe a couple months after it was, posted, put online. I don't know how long after the fact, after the event that it was put on. I'm just saying I went back and watched. I just remember it was like a month or two after they had posted it. I remember watching that and thinking, well, we'll see how long it was home for you guys.
Right.
But I think at this point, I think he just needs to, unless WWE backs a truckload of money up to his house or whatever, and maybe money's not a factor for him. I don't know. But if I were Matt Hardy, I would take that broken gimmick, go to AEW. I know he still is in contact and friends with the Young Bucks.
Right.
They had their program on Ring of Honor and the indie circuit before they went to WWE. Mind you, this is before AEW was even formed. So I don't know. If I were Matt Hardy, I would go to AEW. But I would be very disappointed. However, I think this is what they would end up doing. I'd be very disappointed if they pushed him as their leader of the Dark Order. But I don't know. If they did that, maybe they'd get the Dark Order gimmick over.
Right. This one's a pretty simple answer. The Revival, I think we know where they're headed when their contract runs out.
We think we do, but then we said that with Marty Scurll. Like I was all but sure he was going to AEW, and then I saw the article that said he signed with Ring of Honor. I'm like, why? But apparently, and I don't know how they're able to do this because I know Ring of Honor is not doing as well as they have in years past, but they basically offered him WWE type money.
Right.
So,
well, they're putting all their chips in one basket, you know. I think we know that the Revival is going to AEW. They're up in April. Dash Wilder has 10 more weeks than Scott Dawson due to injury, but I think we know that they're headed there. This is an interesting one. I'm curious to see where he goes. Rey Mysterio is up in October.
I think he just stays with WWE. Does
with his son on the line, you know, because his son is kind of training. I don't see him leaving.
I don't see him leaving because I think once his contract is up, I think he'll hang it up. At least I hope he does. I mean, I'm used to the Rey Mysterio from whenever I was watching in the 90s. Just, you know, I'm kind of spoiled in that regard. He was, in my opinion, the best cruiserweight in WCW. I mean, he was the best all-around wrestler in WCW at the time in the mid-90s, maybe next to Dean Malenko. But I just hope when his contract is up, he just, you know, if he wants to, you know, keep a Legends contract or whatever, sign a Legends contract and just do behind-the-scenes stuff or one-off appearances, I hope he does that. But then again, you've got guys like Bret Hart that I don't know what kind of contract he has with WWE, but he was the one that showed up on AEW whenever they first revealed their title belt. So,
Right.
I don't know. I'd say if I were Rey Mysterio, I would just do whatever he would be allowed to do, but still have a good relationship, keep good ties with WWE.
All right, so now I kind of want to hit you with like these rapid fire, just like quick.
Go for it.
AEW, wherever they're going. A lot of these guys are up in 2020. So what's your thoughts on Flip Gordon? Where is he going? If he's going anywhere.
That's a tough one because I could see him. Because if you go back and watch the Being the Elite episodes, like the earlier Being the Elite was so much better than it is now. I mean, like super funny. Whenever they first put Flip Gordon with Marty Scurll and like they did this whole like this is when they were doing New Japan at the time, and I know this is not rapid fire at all, but whenever they did the whole Marty and Flip take Japan shtick or whatever, if you're listening or watching this and you've not watched any of the Being the Elite episodes, go back and start from episode 1. I mean, they're hilarious. I will say some of it is NSF material, not sufficient for, or NSFW material, not sufficient for work, which is unfortunate. I think it'd still be just as good if they left all the swearing and stuff out of it. That's just my opinion. But anyway, it's funny stuff. I mean, Marty and Flip, they have so much chemistry together. So all that being said, I wouldn't be surprised if he stays with Ring of Honor. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes to AEW because him and Matt Jackson had that whole, you know, where do you think you're going
Right.
shtick. I've actually got that shirt where Matt Jackson, like, if you watch the Being the Elite episodes, if you watch them do like the whole handshake thing, and then it pops up as like this yellow and pink pixelated screen or whatever, and Matt looks into the camera and says like, where do you think you're going or whatever, and then he gets a super kick. It's the same thing every time. You know what's coming, and it's still funny. But I know Flip Gordon also has kind of a new persona now that he did from then. Now he's like the mercenary or whatever. So
Right.
As far as what's best for him, honestly, this is going to sound so materialistic. I would just go with whoever between AEW and Ring of Honor, whoever is going to offer him the most money. because I think he would be a good fit for either of those. I would not go to WWE or NXT. I think he would be so hindered by that.
What about RVD?
I think he just needs to retire.
Retire it, yeah.
I think he needs to retire. I think he needs to do a WWE Legends contract. I don't know if they'd put him in their Hall of Fame or not. I wouldn't be surprised if they did or didn't. But if he also wants to do non-wrestling appearances, kind of similar with Rey Mysterio, I would just do whatever he's allowed to do, but I would keep that good relationship and keep those good ties with WWE.
What about Luke Harper?
AEW. Even though I'll say this, it pretty much nobody, at least at this point that I'm aware of, Matt Hardy maybe to some degree, but nobody that makes the jump to AEW, and we kind of talked about this last week, no one would move the needle, so to speak, for me. There are people that would be exciting to go, for them to go, and I'd like to see. Luke Harper / Brody Lee would be one of them, but I don't think it doesn't move the needle, so to speak, in terms of viewers. I don't think anyone's gonna like, oh, AEW signed this guy, like I gotta watch now. Matt Hardy maybe to some degree, but unless you've got a guy like Randy Orton before he signed, I think that would get a lot of people's attention. Unless you have a WWE lifer, so to speak, that shows up on AEW, and I'm just trying to think of, if they had a Batista on there. I'm just trying to think who else. Allegedly, so whenever, and kind of backtracking a little bit, whenever Bret Hart showed up to reveal the AEW title, that was allegedly supposed to be Ric Flair.
Oh, okay.
Keyword allegedly, but it depends on what articles you read, who you talk to. So, let's do a couple more, and then we probably got to wrap this up.
So at this point now, I kind of want to ask you. I kind of wrote down like a top 5 NXT or AEW, or who's going where, for both men and women, because we could go all day with these people.
Oh yeah, we could do a part 2 of the show easily.
So as far as NXT goes, I kind of wrote down some women that I feel like would benefit if they went to NXT. I just want to kind of get, if one sticks out to you, your thoughts on them. To me, Tessa Blanchard, I think going to NXT would be beneficial for her, because that's where the big women's division is right now, in my opinion. Taya Valkyrie, just because John Morrison's there, that's his wife. So going WWE would be a place for her. Sue Young, Madison Rain's already had some Mae Young classic exposure, and Kiera Hogan, who's an Impact favorite right now. Any thoughts on any of them? Does it sound good, bad?
I think you'd have the dream matches with like Tessa Blanchard and Charlotte Flair. I think they'd build that towards like a WrestleMania, playing off the whole like Daughters of the Four Horsemen type thing. The other 4, I mean, Valkyrie, I've kind of seen some of her matches. I mean, not very, to be honest, not very many. I've maybe watched a little bit more content-wise of her matches as opposed to like a Brian Cage, like I mentioned, but it just goes back to the fact that I don't really watch Impact, and it's I don't really I've not watched enough of her to, I guess, accurately judge, much less any of the others that you mentioned. So
let's go to men, because it seems like you might have a better judge on some of these guys. For NXT, I'm looking at Jay Lethal, Chris Sabin, Michael Elgin, Eddie Edwards, and Nick Aldis as kind of like a top 5 guys that I think NXT would be beneficial for. And any of those names stick out to you, or feel good or bad about with NXT?
I think you might have something with Eddie Edwards. He's a guy I watched a little more content on. He's a good in-ring worker. Michael Elgin, I watched some of his New Japan stuff. I'll be honest, I think New Japan is where that's just where he needs to be. I mean, the fans know him. He's gotten over. I think New Japan is where he needs to be, and then anywhere else that partners with him, whether it's Ring of Honor, NWA maybe. Nick Aldis, I think, is good where he is until they take the belt off of him.
Yeah.
I don't know when they will, because they kind of act like they want to. They act like, when I say they, I mean NWA. It seems like they want to go to the NWA of old, where they have like their main champion be champion for more than just a few months. Like I'm talking a couple years,
Right.
like do a couple year run. If they take the belt off of him, I would say not Impact. He's a tough one. I don't know if I'd put him with NXT. I might throw him in with AEW.
Right. Some of them go either way. It just depends on who offers what. And
yeah, who are the other guys on your list?
so is Jay Lethal.
Jay Lethal. That's who I want.
I just want the dream match versus him and Velveteen. I mean, that's really where I'm at.
I'm not convinced I'm not convinced NXT would use him right. I feel like they would drop the ball on him. I'm afraid that he would just ultimately be on NXT. Then they'd bring him to Raw or SmackDown, and then he would just
fall off the scene.
Now, if they did the Black Machismo gimmick and it got over with the fans, and WWE Creative realized it and did something with it and kept it going, maybe. But I feel like they could do that in AEW and it would be fantastic, because he's been on episodes of Being the Elite, and I just that gimmick is hilarious. Like if you've not watched Jay Lethal's Black Machismo gimmick, where he basically acts like the Macho Man, go and watch some of those YouTube videos. I mean, they're hilarious. We just lost lights in here. Can you go? Hit that light.
Hit that light real quick.
Oh,
there it is.
I guess we just didn't move for more than a few seconds, or however long that motion sensor light is on. All right, so we got Lethal, we had Eddie Edwards, we had Elgin, we had Aldis. We're missing one.
Chris Sabin.
You
already know my thoughts.
Chris Sabin, NXT. That's just my quick answer. I think NXT is where he deserves to be. I think he's just got the track record and just the overall fantastic in-ring work.
Right.
So hold on. I want to do one more, because I know it's not going to happen, at least for a couple years, but I also wanted an excuse to play this soundbite. Okay. So that soundbite is Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. So Kenny Omega, I'm not sure how the Young Bucks contract is, but Kenny Omega, I know, signed through 2024.
All of them did.
All of them did.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say it's 2024 and their contracts are coming up. And this also depends on how the state of AEW is at that time. So that's kind of subjective. This is going to be kind of a subjective answer. But if you are them, where would you go? What would you do?
From my understanding, they're all blacklisted by WWE. So unless there's a big conversation that happens, I don't see them being able to come.
Blacklisted by who, though?
I've heard Triple H. I've heard Triple H wants nothing to do with Cody Rhodes. He wants nothing to do.
I can see the reason he doesn't want anything to do with Cody Rhodes. I can totally
Young Bucks
understand that.
Apparently have spit on contract. Like they just. I've heard through the rumor mill that there's just not good track records with any of the Being the Elite and the faces of AEW in a sense. Even Chris Jericho has kind of been blacklisted, which is sad, because he may never make the Hall of Fame for WWE. But
see, I don't buy anything as far as like WWE saying someone's blacklisted, because CM Punk was blacklisted, and now look where he's at.
Right, there's conversations that have to take place. Time can heal wounds, so we'll see what happens there. But I'm not sure. I don't see AEW necessarily failing. It may take a step back at some point if WWE does the right things.
Yeah, I don't.
But it all kind of falls on, can WWE do what they did when WCW was around? Can they find ways to shut down what is their major competitor right now?
I selfishly want to see a Kenny Omega match at WrestleMania.
And selfishly, you might see that years down the line.
And selfishly, even more so, like, say, Kenny Omega and whoever he's wrestling, you guys have an hour to go out there and tear the house down. Like, I want to see that 5, 6, 7-star match at a WrestleMania. I want to, and this goes far beyond WWE, whether it's WWE, AEW, hopefully soon. Give him time to have a good match. Like, don't just throw him out there for 10 or 15 minutes. And I get it. They're limited on TV time. I get that they're limited even on, pay-per-view time. But go out there, give him even maybe not an hour. Say you got 45 minutes. Kind of what they did with his match with Moxley, which I mean, there are a lot of people out there that said that match was trash. They didn't like it.
It was amazing.
I thought it was great.
It was amazing.
I personally, I loved it. I remember watching it with you and our buddy Austin. We were watching it live over at was it Austin's house? I think it. I mean, it's irrelevant, but I just remember thinking like, wow, this is like they kept building it and building it and building it in terms of the match. Like one spot was better than the spot before, but just give him time to do like an actual match like he had with Okada in New Japan. And I don't know. I think if you have that on a big stage like WrestleMania, I think that's something that would grab the non-WWE fans now to be like, hey, you can watch our product and catch good wrestling. But besides that, I mean, I don't necessarily have a desire to see Omega or Young Bucks in WWE. Same thing with Young Bucks. I just selfishly want to see them in a match at WrestleMania.
Right.
Maybe the ideal scenario is just being like, okay, WWE and AEW are going to – this is never going to happen. This is just 100% fantasy booking. But WWE and AEW, we're going to partner up together. We're going to do, some kind of event. Maybe do it on foreign soil or something so there's not kind of weird conflict or I don't even know how to phrase that, but just have an event, put it on, have Young Bucks and New Day, or you could even do the Elite and New Day. You could do Omega and AJ Styles. You could do AJ and the OC against the Elite. I mean, there's just so many things you could do if WWE and AEW collaborated on one event,
right? And
just be like, okay, here's the event. This is what we're doing. We're going to collaborate on this. Revenues, we're just going to split 50-50. Because it's not in the U.S., there's not going to be any kind of like, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. Your viewership isn't going to take away from ours, and ours isn't going to take away from yours, kind of thing. Because American viewers is how they get most of their ratings. So,
well, with that being said, for time's sake, let's just do this with AEW. If you could pick, maybe 3 girls and 3 guys, or maybe just the top 3 names that you want to see in AEW, maybe not even in 2020, but in the near future, like what are 3? Like I could do 3 girls and 3 guys, but if you want to make it just the top 3 names that you want to see in AEW, that would be
top 3 names right now to go to AEW is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Matt Hardy, for one. Go to AEW full time. You mean?
Yeah. I mean that's home.
AEW. Matt Hardy to AEW is probably my number 1. I gotta think about this for just a second because I know I'm gonna say my 3 and then I'm gonna leave some out.
Well, there's 1,000. Like I have honorable mentions for days on my list. Like there's just so many names.
I would say Matt Hardy, and eventually, if you want to have a 1 and a 1A, eventually bring Jeff Hardy in with him. 2, Jay Lethal with the Black Machismo gimmick. 3, I don't know. This isn't going to happen for a while. Probably. I mean, I'm not sure what his contract looks like. I would still like to see Marty Scurll in AEW, but I think we're probably a ways happening from that. So,
well, I'm going to share my top 3 for women and for men. I'd love to see AEW get a really good women's division going. I think that's something they're missing right now. So I think Tenelli Dashwood. She's kind of one of the bigger women's names that's out there right now that's not WWE. And she's not going to go back to WWE. So, and that's clear. So, I think she's a big one for me. I'm going to say Ruby Riott over to AEW. I feel like WWE missed the mark with her. And I think she has the star power to go into AEW and be a a game changer for that women's division. And then I'm also going to say Ember Moon. I think
That's a good one.
I think Ember Moon to the AEW women's division would be a huge one because it's not a Bailey or it's not one of those 4 horsewomen of WWE, but she is a name that is recognized. She's talented, and she could be the face of your women's division, and I think that's huge for them. As far as men go, the number 1 for me is actually the Briscoe brothers.
Ooh,
I think
that's a good one too.
I think adding them to the tag division at AEW would just be a killer move for them. That would be a huge help. I'm also going to say Matt Sydal, a.k.a. Evan Bourne.
Evan Bourne, yeah.
I think he fits their arsenal. I think he fits what they're trying to do match-wise. I mean, think of him versus Pac or him versus Adam Hangman Page or Kenny Omega, Cody Rhodes. Like, there's just a lot of matches that are there for that. And then I'm just looking at my list. There's just so many names to pick from. I'm gonna have to say, just because I'm a huge fan, I'm gonna have to say PJ Black. And if you don't know who that is, Justin Gabriel, just because he fits their arsenal too, and I feel like WWE missed the mark with him. And I think as far as wrestling goes, he is a true wrestler at heart. And there's so many other names.
PJ Black's got the sweet handlebar mustache going too.
I mean, there are other guys that could be like Wade Barrett.
I forgot about Wade Barrett. Oh man,
Alberto Beltran. I wanted to get to Big Cass and Enzo Amore. Like Ryback. Like there's names out there that even if you brought them in and didn't push them, like it's like, hey, this is recognizable though. This is something that even if we squash match them, like, at least it gets a crowd reaction out of. I mean, Joey Ryan's out there, doing his thing. Rich Swann, Austin Aries, like I said, James Storms, Bully Ray. Even as old as he is, he gets over with crowds. I think I even was going to mention this. Aerostar and Drago, if you're not familiar with them from Lucha Underground, they would kind of be something that you could put on NXT to give like a Lucha Bros kind of vibe to NXT. So there's just a lot of people out there that I feel like deserve chances, deserve shots on all these promotions, that especially AEW, NXT, WWE, that we're missing right now, and they're playing ball in smaller divisions, and I think they deserve better. So
yeah, there's just so many names out there, like you mentioned. I mean, I wasn't even thinking of Wade Barrett, wasn't even thinking of Ryback. I'll be honest, I'm not a Enzo and Cass guy. I did not forget about them, but I just never, they're the one act I just never got into. That's just me being 100% honest, but
they just create heat.
Yeah, I'm going to take a look at our live feed real quick and just kind of go look at some guys, look at some people that have interacted with us. William Lorenzana, he threw out some suggestions. Going back to our conversation about Moxley turning on Jericho, he said, reminds me of DDP turning on NWO when he was asked to join. That was in 96, 97, something like that.
That's a good.
A friend of yours, Christina Marie Martin, says, "Hey, Cole.
What up?
Watching from Gillespie, Illinois. My wife joined in at one point. What's up, guys? Yes, let's hear you scream, LOL. That must have been when we were talking about whenever Everett said scream if we have any problems. Let's see. Valkyrie is still champion.
Thank you.
Let's see.
Thanks for letting us know that.
Oh, that's right. So Impact is on Access TV. That's right.
Yeah, you don't get that everywhere.
Keith Lee versus Brock during the Rumble. 100% agree. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that.
Listen, go on record. That will happen.
Cole's calling it. Let's see. Killer Cross is one we did not mention.
He's on my honorable mention list. I want to repackage him in NXT. Just know that.
Let's see. Kelly Klein, former Ring of Honor Women's Champion.
I have her in AEW.
He also says Punk at the Rumble and eliminates Brock.
That's the rumor, but I don't know if I believe it.
Yeah, I don't know either. Alex Shelley is 36.
Yeah, he's up there.
So
he's got time. He's got about four years.
So he makes an interesting suggestion with Killer Cross, have him team with Sean Spears.
Hey,
because Sean Spears, he's doing this thing where he's looking for a tag partner.
Yeah, you could bring him into AEW. That could work.
So,
I like that suggestion.
Let's see. Black Rose was the wrestler I was trying to think of earlier with Tessa Blanchard having the racism issues.
I remember that.
Last thing, he says Bucks versus Usos at WrestleMania.
That would be a dream match for me. I would definitely say that if we were going to put a WWE team versus a current WWE team versus a current AEW team, that would be the match that I would probably want to see.
That'd be a good one. So, all right, I think we're going to wrap it up for this week. I guess we'll pick out a topic sometime during the week, and then I'll share it with you guys as far as what we decide. But we kind of decided this week's topic on the fly last week, so we'll talk and we'll let you know what we come up with next week's topic. Ideally, we won't spend 45 minutes talking about the week in review, so to speak, but hey, that happens sometimes whenever you've got so much wrestling content out there. And I said, we didn't even touch on Ring of Honor or NWA. So, all right, well, we're going to end it. For Cole, for T.O., who did not pop in today, I'll figure out why. I'm sure he'll be here next week. For Alex, we will see you guys next week.
And so, goodbye. Mwah. And good night. Bang!
This podcast was a presentation of LightUpMedia.fm.